and we're trapped, locked in a trailer. We had people following us, no way to get out. I lived on the streets. I struggled with addiction. I left and I decided to go enroll myself in high school in a different city. Fear drives a lot of our decisions, but it's not real. Once you lose everything, you have nothing
Yeah.
left to lose. And that's been, didn't lose clients. I didn't lose employees. I didn't lose friends. It brought me closer to so many
Yeah.
people because so many people have different parts of their own story that relate to mine.
When you were starting, you said you were terrified.
I actually started it from my loft. We grew over the years. We
Yeah.
grew into a 3,000 square foot office that we got to design ourselves. And a week after I took the photo of having $40 in my account, we had $40,000 in the account. I had to have the courage to tell them. And so that's where it came from.
Welcome to the New World Podcast, where we delve into the ever changing and accelerating pace of global change and its impact on our lives. I'm your host, John Paul Flores, broadcasting live from the New World Studio. Today, we're diving into the world of AI and automation. As an enthusiast and expert in lead generation, I will guide you through understanding and leveraging these technologies for your business and for your personal use. And don't forget, AI and automation might be unstoppable forces, but that doesn't mean you are powerless. Tune in to learn how to make them work for you and not the other way around. But first, let's meet our guest. Welcome to the New World Podcast, where we navigate the changing world around us. I'm your host, Jampo Flores, specializing in lead generation and AI automation, here to help you understand how our world is changing and what it means for you. In this episode, we have Serena Mastin. Serena is an author, entrepreneur, and founder of Heartfelt Stories LLC and Pulse Marketing. Her memoir, titled Exposed, You Can't Heal When You Hide, explores her journey of overcoming adversity and embracing vulnerability. Tune in as we discuss healing, entrepreneurship, and the high impacts of authentic storytelling. Serena, it's a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you. I am honored to be here and to share my journey in hopes that it'll inspire others.
By the way, before we begin on the in-depth questions, because I do have some, do you mind giving us a quick intro on who Serena is, his experiences, and what keeps you busy this day?
So, I have like a purpose statement that I live by in business and in my personal life. And it's my purpose is to get to the heart of what matters in a way that fosters healing, gives grace, cares deeply, overcomes obstacles, creates trust, and builds relationships so that I can empower others to own their stories, look inward, stop hiding, and step into their power. So that kind of sums it up as to who I am, whether it's on the marketing side and I'm empowering others to tell their stories to reach an audience, or on a personal side, if I'm doing a speaking engagement to help others own their story and push through healing. So that's me.
You know, authenticity is a big part of your journey. Do you mind giving us a quick intro on why you think being transparent on who you are, what's your messages, what's your goal is very important, especially if you're a company or even at a personal level?
I think the biggest thing is that, especially as entrepreneurs, we hide behind who we think we need to be. We hide behind, I'm strong, or I got it all together. And the truth is that we're all learning as we go through the journey. And when you are marketing yourself to a customer, they want to know that you're real. They want to know that they can connect with you, because that's what creates long-term brand ambassadors. When you're working with your employees, right? That is a whole different level of transparency, because if they feel like you're pretending to be strong all the time, then you'll never actually like get to the bottom of of what they're struggling with. Or they may be afraid to talk to you because you're coming off as like you have it all together, and so they can't be fully themselves. So it really it goes into everything that you do. You have to be who you are authentically, creatively, and beautifully and accept it. And in that moment, people will naturally navigate towards you.
So basically, if you're putting on a persona that I'm strong, I can do this by myself, I don't need any help, I'm not scared at all, I'm new at this, but I have it all figured out. People, not only your customers, but also your employees, are also scared of asking questions. That
Of course. Well, and in my personal experience, there's many times where I've lost employees because they just didn't feel like they could break down, that they could take a
yeah,
break because I was working so hard and pushing myself
yeah,
so hard and pretending like I still had it together, even though
yeah,
internally I was falling apart.
yeah,
And it made them feel like they were never enough. And even though it was my own, issue that I had not even seen, some of
yeah.
those employees that left the company at that time brought it to my attention. And immediately I had to shift and change the way that I was approaching things to create a welcoming and safe
Yeah.
environment for my employees.
And in your experiences, how did by doing that, being vulnerable, actually help you also get more customers?
So, it's interesting if
Yeah,
you approach things in a way that is salesy, right?
yeah.
And you have your script or you have your methodology. People can see right through that. But when you show up to a conversation or a meeting and you open it up to like sharing your experience and also asking and listening about their experience, it allows you to connect in a way that is a lifelong connection, not just a sales meeting. And so whether they choose to work with us or not, we've made a new friend.
I feel like, especially when you're a meeting, if you act like you're the toughest person in the room, the person across the table also feels that way. They don't want to open up in such a way that you can actually help them.
Yes. And for us, there's been a lot of experiences that we had, especially when. So my husband worked in the business for most of the time that we've been in business, and about I would say about 4 5 years ago now, he committed suicide. And so it didn't just impact my kids and our family, it also impacted our clients and our employees. And if I would have approached it in a way that was victimizing myself or, creating, an uncomfortable environment for everyone, then people wouldn't have an opportunity to heal. And so I had to open it up to allow everyone to heal at their own time, whether it was my family and my kids, or whether it was my employees and my clients. And so I shared, we are struggling through this. And I just want you to know that we're doing the best that we can to hold everything together. And yeah, that was hard to say that we're struggling through this to your clients, right? Because you're automatically thinking they're going to leave. I'm going to lose more clients. And I did lose some, but those weren't the right clients for us.
Yeah.
And so you
Well,
learn from that
yeah.
experience.
I'm sorry about that. I didn't know about that experience that you had. I think in that we have the lesson that people don't like people who try to victimize themselves. It's okay to actually say that, hey, I'm not okay, but we'll go through this. It's like taking responsibility for everything that goes around. I think that's what people are looking for.
Yeah. And when I talk about transparency and
Yeah.
vulnerability, that doesn't mean that you have to share your dirty laundry with everyone. It just means that you have to have the courage to say, I'm having a rough day. And, or, we're struggling right now. And do you mind if, I ask you for help? Can you help me? Can you support me with this? Whatever it might be, it's choosing your words in a way that allows other people to feel empowered and inspired to support you, but not to feel sorry for you. That's not the intent.
You didn't have an easy life, especially based on your history. It's not even if people imagined how bad their life or early start could be. It's not even gonna be close to that. Do you mind letting us know how you actually got through that and how you built an amazing life after the fact?
Yes, absolutely. So, for the listeners that have never heard my story, my biological father was the leader of a satanic cult, and he sexually abused my sister and I before, as young children, and actually took my innocence before the age of 5. And we were locked in a trailer, including my mother, and there was just no way to get out. And he had tape recorders, he had people following us, and so it really felt like we were trapped. And when my mom finally did um, connect with someone that was able to get us out, my mom had to earn her rights back as a parent. And on my 6th birthday, I was torn away from everything that I knew, and I was put into witness protection and the foster system. I went through about 9 different foster homes. And by the time my mom did earn her rights back as a parent, I was already in my early teens. And so I'd kind of had this determination to prove everyone wrong. I had this determination to not be a statistic. And I made some horrible choices as a teenager. And I decided to leave after my mom worked so hard to get me back. I left and I decided to go enroll myself in high school in a different city. I lived on the streets. I struggled with addiction um, and other types of abuse that you face when you're on the streets. I would say if I could make that decision again, I'd probably change that decision. But as a teenager, you couldn't talk me out of anything. But I have to say, I had 3 jobs. I took the bus to each job, and I graduated from high school while living on the streets. And so I was still determined at that time to prove everyone wrong, that I
Yeah,
was going to grow, that I was going to conquer the world, and that nothing was going to hold me back. I wasn't going to let my past be an excuse for my
yeah,
future. And so, after I started climbing the corporate ladder, I
yeah,
started growing in my career. It was blood, sweat, and tears all the way. I was working through, you know, um, the good old boy mentality where, they're like, do you know who I am? And, women know nothing. And so I
yeah.
had to work for about 17 years in a corporate environment, growing and learning from those experiences. And then I started my agency. And so, of course, the latter part of my story, as my husband of 10 years took
Yeah.
his life. And I have to say that through it all, most people think that
Yeah,
success comes from, being on top of the mountain and saying,
yeah.
I did it. I have money. I have things. It's not success. The beauty in finding your truth, in finding who you are and your purpose is the journey, because you have so much growth and so much learning during the process of climbing that mountain. And when you get to the top, you have so much more gratitude for being there.
That's what one of the most things I find interesting, especially with the many entrepreneurs that I've talked with. They're not the people that are portrayed on the media that entrepreneurs, they like the money, they like the success. Sure, who doesn't? I mean, let's be honest, we're humans, we like that part of things. But these people who are very successful, they're very simple in such a way that you can see that they've become so successful at what they do, not because of the money or the fancy car or the fancy house, but because that they're genuinely in love in what they're doing, or they're trying to prove something for themselves. And that's,
Yeah.
I think, very fascinating.
I agree. I think the most fierce and
Yeah,
powerful leaders or
yeah,
entrepreneurs are the ones that have lived in the trenches, who've
yeah,
endured great pain,
yeah,
who've made a million mistakes and failed many times. And they've been broken,
yeah,
but they've been brave. And their
yeah,
failure never stops them. They just continue to be fueled
yeah.
and determined to rise up and move forward. I think that's the beauty in the journey.
Because what they experienced in the past can't be possibly worse than what they're gonna be facing tomorrow.
Yes. And even if it is worse, you have to remember that in those moments, what is this teaching me? You have to ask
Yeah,
the questions like, even in the darkest moments when I was on the floor in tears, crying, and just broken. And you can imagine I've had many of those. As soon as I'm able to gather myself and take a breath and really look within, I felt like for my entire life, and even when I was a little girl, all the way through living on the streets and after my husband's passing, I always felt I have a bigger purpose. No way that all of this is happening in my life for me not to have something greater that I can give back. And so it's those moments where you have to look inward.
It's fascinating that there's some people like you who even on the toughest moments they try to see what could be good from that opportunity or that adversity, and there's other people who has everything good in life and they still see everything that is wrong.
Yes, that's tough because it's a mindset. And I think there's a few key components to mindset. Self awareness is one of them. You have to be really aware of
Yeah.
your thoughts and your perceptions and your judgments. Then self management. You have to be able to manage how you respond to certain situations. And there's social awareness where you have to understand how you're responding and how you're managing your own behavior is perceived by others. And so social awareness allows you to connect with people in a positive way, or it'll create a huge gap because you're not aware of the way that you're showing up. And so I think those are the big components of when somebody is negative, I typically give them grace because they're not aware that they're being perceived that way.
Your experiences led you through marketing. Can you let us know why choose marketing out of all the other professions out there?
I would say it was an accident. I actually started, well, gosh, this is so long ago. It makes me sound so old. Before the internet came out, where we had the really big computers, I was the first internet salesperson for a new home builder. And they used to say, "Oh, we'll never sell a house online. That would be absurd. No one will ever go online to do that." And so I started that role. And as I started that role, I was probably 18 years old at the time. I was able to evolve it into tying in sales and marketing into a process, a program, and how to respond to internet leads and then how to market to them. That's where it started. And so I honestly, when I started my journey, I had no idea that it would branch out into this, and blossom into a beautiful marketing career. But that's where it started.
And you founded your own company when?
So I founded Pulse Marketing in 2013. So next month will be 11. We'll be in business for 11 years. And I mean, we've been through a lot. So I'm just surprised we're still standing. But it's such an amazing journey. But at the same time, it is hard. It doesn't
Yeah.
get easier either. Like you think, oh, you've been in business for 10 years. You know what you're doing. Oh no, there's always surprises around every corner. But yeah, I started it in 2013, and I actually started it from my loft in my
Yeah.
house. And so my employees would actually come into work every morning through my front door. And then as we grew over the years, we
Yeah.
grew into a 3,000 square foot office that we got to design ourselves. And it
Yeah.
was super cool. And then after the pandemic, everyone worked remote. And then now we just have a team of people working remote from Boston to Florida to Dallas to California. So it's been an amazing experience.
Marketing is one of those professions or businesses that you can start where it's so interesting by the fact that it's always evolving, because the fact that you're marketing to someone to be effective means that they need to be curious, and to be curious it needs to be unique or genuinely amazing. And the other point is that marketing has a low barrier of entry, that there's so much competition out there. It's genuinely so hard to even stand out. How did you manage to win on that kind of market?
That's a great question. And you're right, it is hard because marketing is not only ever evolving, there's so many different platforms that are being launched every day to make things better. But then you have to learn them and you learn from those experiences that they're not always better. And so I think the way that we've learned to connect our clients with their audience is through research. We understand who the target audience is, we understand what their behaviors are, what's important to them, and then we connect those dots. So, for instance, we've kind of categorized all people into a acronym, and so it's the bank acronym. So B stands for a blueprint. So a blueprint personality needs a plan, right? So when you're marketing to that person, they need to know that there's an action plan that they can follow. So that's the B in bank. A is action. That's your results driven person that likes to have quick wins and is also quick to make decisions, right? Action personalities are also A type personalities. And then the N in bank is for nurturing. So you have a nurturing personality, you're going to focus on marketing to them in a way that anything that you sell to them, it benefits the greater good, right? So now you're going to be talking about you buy a pair of shoes, another pair of shoes goes to a charity of your choice. That goes for the nurturing personality. And then K is for knowledge. That's the personality that wants all the answers. And so you modify your campaigns based on each of those buyer personality styles and based on the industry. And you connect with them on a real level with what's important to them. And
Do
that's how
you
we've done it.
do you see that the greater companies, especially on the industries that you follow, have all of these B, A, and K personalities on the dots, or do they just choose one and go with it full time?
So normally we'll see when we do the research, because a lot of times the research, we won't move forward unless we have research on who their existing customers are and who they're missing. Who should they be targeting? And normally when you start to collect the data, you'll see it's an age range between here and here. It's a demographic or, it's a psychographic that includes certain personality traits. And some of them will be more than one of those letters. You'll get a blueprint, also a knowledge, right? So we've learned how to kind of adapt and switch our messaging to really play the game and try to get a message that really reaches them, not in a way that's salesy, but in a way that answers their questions, that gives them a plan that helps them feel heard and not feel sold to, because I think that's the last thing that people want, because everything is so saturated. They're being sold to all the time.
I think there was a research where they said an average person is seeing 6,000 to 10,000 advertisements every single day.
Yeah,
That's a scary fact.
it is.
We're so bombarded of these advertisements of this media that we can't even have a sovereignty of thinking.
Yes. Or you can't take a breath
Yeah,
because it's just too much. But what gets your attention? A lot of times in those moments, even when you're looking at an ad, it's
yeah,
what connects with you. And I can say that the majority of the time I'm a nurturing personality,
yeah,
but I also am a blueprint. So one of those two ads that kind of gives me a plan, like a plan ahead where
yeah,
I can kind of put out all the pieces together to see where it's going to take me, right? Let's say for travel, that would be a good one. Like you can pay over this course of time so that you and your family can enjoy this. You can celebrate as a gift for Christmas, but then you and your family are going to go in this time. Those
yeah,
types of things, like, buy now, pay later, are great for a blueprint. And I would say for nurturing, because those two are my personality. I mean, you tell me that I'm given back to anyone and I'm in. So it's funny. It is funny, but you have to push through the noise, and the only way that we could push through the noise is to speaking to people or using messaging that
yeah.
speaks to people in a human way.
Most people think that the store based marketing only works for certain companies like the personal brands or the brands that genuinely started from just one person, maybe on his backyard or in his garage making this company. But there's also some companies who are maybe shoe brands who are amazing at making stores in such a way that people are deeply connected with them. How do they make those? How do you make an emotional connection to a shoes?
There's so many ways to do it, but think about the legacy of
Yeah,
just like the journey of how shoes started,
yeah,
right? Like going
yeah,
back to when those shoes were made for the first time and
yeah,
how without those shoes, we wouldn't have the protection over our feet, but we take that for granted. And unfortunately, we've forgotten the history of why we wear these shoes. We're just looking for the flashiest shoes, the best shoes, all these things. But what if you were able to hear a story or a message that gave you a little piece of history before you're buying those shoes? And it tells the story not only about where shoes came from, but the shoe company itself. And automatically, those two stories are going to draw you in because now you're not only hearing about the history of shoes, but now you're also hearing the story of the company who's making them now and what their goals and what their journey is. And that just automatically pulls you in because it's a story. But if I'm just selling shoes and you just have a bunch of
yeah,
shoes in my face all the time, I'm not
yeah,
buying.
yeah,
But when you start to tell a story and you start to connect it to people in a way that shows like that, wow, we sometimes do forget and take advantage of things that are just everyday items. But in
yeah,
reality, it's something that we can connect with an audience depending upon what company we're speaking with. And a shoe
yeah.
company is no different.
That's amazing. You have two companies. Correct me if I'm wrong. Heartfelt Stories LLC and Pulse Marketing. What's the difference between the two?
So Heartfelt Stories is really my business separate from Pulse Marketing for my book. And so, in writing my own story and in contributing to different anthologies, I've also done an anthology with 30 other women. And it's called Own Your Story. And it became an Amazon bestseller in the first few days. So that would be through Heartfelt Stories. I also do speaking engagements. I just did a speaking engagement at a nonprofit that supports women and children that have experienced domestic abuse. And so a keynote speech or writing, those types of things they fall under Heartfelt Stories. And you can actually go to my personal website at serenamastin.com and it'll give you that side of my business. And then Pulse Marketing is strictly marketing and advertising. We have a full in-house team that supports small to mid-sized businesses, and we act as an extension of their teams so that they don't have to hire a full in-house marketing department.
That's amazing. And what's interesting is a lot of people, if they have a story that is not that great, especially to write in a book, they try to hide it. Why should somebody, especially with your experience, it's not the most pleasant in the world, why should you own your story? Why should you be proud of it? Why should you share it to as many people as possible?
Because number one, everyone has a story, and so
Yeah,
there's someone out there that has a similar story that you can connect with. But if
yeah,
you're hiding that story, or if you're suppressing some of the past
yeah,
emotions that you've experienced, all it does is allow those things to rot and decay. It doesn't allow it to grow and evolve. Think about a
yeah,
plant. If you put a plant in the closet, it's going to die. But if you put that plant out on your patio, it's going to thrive and grow.
yeah,
But in order to thrive and grow, it needs sun and it needs water. And so you have to be in a place where you feel like you can tell your story in a fluid way that
yeah,
flows without giving away, you don't have to give away your dirty laundry, but in a way that flows. And then you
yeah.
have to be willing to step out of the darkness and into the light.
So in short, I what did you feel when you actually started sharing your story?
I was terrified. I didn't want to share it. I wanted to stay hiding. To put it in perspective, when I was a little girl and my father would abuse me, I would my mom would find me hiding in the
Yeah,
closet. And as a grown woman, you know, I
yeah,
realized that any time something would happen, I would go hide in the closet and I would
yeah,
cry. And so I saw this pattern.
yeah.
And the moment that I saw the pattern, I became aware that I needed to change it. And as much as I didn't want to expose my own story
Yeah.
or expose my truth, I knew that if I wanted other people to tell their stories, I had to have the courage to tell mine. And so that's where it came from.
When you were starting, the you said you were terrified.
Yes.
Is the fear that is the fear is that they're gonna be judging you or that they're not gonna be accepting you? Is that most of the fears that you felt?
Yes. So my story is explicit. I was raw and unfiltered when I wrote my book. So I was afraid that I would lose clients.
Yeah,
I was afraid that I would be judged. I was afraid that it would actually put me in a position where people would push me away. And instead, it brought me closer to so many
yeah.
people because so many people have different parts of their own story that relate to mine. And so it started to blossom in that way. But my fear was to be isolated and
Yeah.
unaccepted and judged. Yeah.
Did you lose any clients or did you see that they're more open?
Oh, when I even went,
Yeah,
so remember when I wrote my book, it took me about a year and a half, and I was
yeah,
not going to publish it. I was not going to publish it. I was going to put it under my bed
yeah,
and just like leave it there. And no, when I published it, people came out of like nowhere, like out of the woodworks, out of different places that I've never even met, and wanted to reach out to me to let me know that they were so grateful that I shared my story because they've been afraid to tell theirs. I didn't lose clients. I didn't lose employees. I didn't lose friends. And I was afraid of all those things. And sometimes our fears that we create are actually not even there. They're just in our mind.
What advice would you give to people who might have a similar story or is just genuinely terrified of the experiences that they've had? Would you advise that they share it as well?
I think the beauty in
Yeah,
first facing your story, accepting it, healing,
yeah,
working through it, and then learning how to share it in a way that empowers others,
yeah,
not in a way that victimizes yourself or your story or focuses
yeah,
on the villain, but in a
yeah,
way that you can empower others, then yes, I would definitely recommend that they do the inner work first and then they face their fears by putting themselves out there because the only way that we can grow is
yeah.
by looking fear straight in the face and giving it a little wink.
Especially when people are sharing their story, they could either do it in two ways. One is the way you did it. You made it so that you've empowered people. And I think there's other people who are sharing their stories that are making it so that it's just a way to terrify other people. Hey,
Yeah.
the world is a very scary place. Don't go in it. But you said, it's scary, but face it because you'll become stronger.
Yes. And it doesn't mean it's easy. It
Yeah.
just means it's worth it.
Well, that's the definition of how they say this courage. When you're scared and you still do it.
Yes, 100%. And the hardest thing is people don't realize that fear drives a lot of our
Yeah,
decisions. And once we recognize that the little voice in our head, like
yeah,
if you've seen the Disney Inside Out,
yeah,
it's a Disney cartoon, and it's all about like you have these little characters in your mind, and you do have one in your mind that is fear.
yeah,
And if you just recognize that that's fear showing up, but it's not real, it's going to be a lot easier to push through it. It's when we allow that fear to tell us even more negative things
yeah,
because your mind is more powerful than you could imagine, and your mind is what really drives healing, or
yeah.
it does the opposite.
It's very interesting to the fact that let's say somebody they're so scared about sharing their story. that they're so ashamed for, or maybe it's such a scary experience that they don't want to share it, to the point that it becomes crippling. They don't want to do anything. They're scared to try anything. Maybe try something fun. They don't want to do it because they're scared of what could happen. But they should realize that if you share your story, it's either people will accept it or they won't. But after a few days, they won't even remember it.
Yes, 100%.
But you've rid yourself of such fear that you can actually move forward.
Because the fear, it weighs you down. It
Yeah,
it doesn't just weigh you down mentally and
yeah,
emotionally. It starts to impact your nervous system. It starts to
yeah,
impact your body. It can create illnesses because stress, the stress hormones, and all of that is
yeah,
so much more powerful than we believe, than we even
yeah, absolutely.
realize. And so, if you allow that fear to continue to get in your way, or the stories that are in your mind to
Yeah,
continue to tell you negative things, then all it's going to do is evolve and get worse, and you're going to feel worse, and you're going to hide
yeah,
more. So, it just takes one step forward, one baby step. It doesn't mean you have to tell your story to the world, it means
yeah,
one person, and then do it again and then do it again.
yeah.
And by the end, you'll start to feel comfortable.
You didn't write your book first before being a business owner. When those days that you were still hiding your story, or at least not sharing it, what were the bad effects that actually gave you?
So, what were the effects on my body, or like the
Your
bad
body, your
effects?
mentality, how you are as an entrepreneur.
Oh, yeah. So, I thought I can hide it for a very long
Yeah,
time, but it did start impacting my body.
yeah,
Gained 40 pounds. I was swelling, so I was having excessive inflammation. I was having stomach issues. I couldn't sleep at night. But then I was fatigued all day. I couldn't focus. These are all things from stress because I thought that I was strong and I had such a high tolerance to stress that it's almost becomes an addiction because you're like, I could overcome this, I could overcome this. But what you're not doing is stepping back and realizing how it is
yeah,
destroying your body. And once I had, I would say, 4 or 5 doctor's appointments and I couldn't figure out what was wrong with me. And
yeah,
finally, one doctor said, your cortisone levels are too high. And if you continue on this road, you're you're not going to make it. You're going to
yeah,
continue to, go in a downward spiral because your body can't handle living in
yeah,
stressful situations like that. It's the fight or flight mentality. You can't be in fight mode all the time. Your body can't handle it. And so it was that moment that I realized I needed to change. But I would say that I've been on a healing journey for my entire life. You don't just heal and move on.
yeah,
Healing isn't linear. It's ever evolving. And so you
yeah.
have to work on it constantly.
Stress is very interesting because it's the cause and effect. It's the cause, but most of the time, because it's the cause, it doesn't get diagnosed. When you see something's wrong with you, you don't necessarily show it that it's stress. No, you just see that, hey, something is wrong with me. Maybe I should take a sleeping pill so I can sleep better. Maybe I should go to the gym more so I can lose all this weight. But most of the time, you should just see what's causing that. Maybe that's an easier fix.
Yes, but you're a lot of times you're blinded by it because it's all these symptoms, but not the
Yeah,
root cause. And that's why I always say you have to look inward because you'll never know what the root cause is until you start unpacking the
yeah.
layers.
For anyone who might be interested in starting their own marketing company, what would you advise them to?
I would say the biggest thing is find a community of
Yeah,
other entrepreneurs that could support you because you're only as smart as the knowledge you have. You need to
yeah,
find other people that have other experiences that can pour into you. So that's huge. Find a community or else you're going to feel alone. Um, Hire people that are smarter than you. And that's huge because you have certain talents and skills that you're meant to bring to the table.
yeah,
Doing everything is not one of them. And so you find people that you believe in, that inspire you, that are smarter than you, to really take the company to the next level. And so I would say a sense of community of entrepreneurs, and then hiring the right people that you can trust in, but then you could also
Yeah.
empower. Those are two big components. Everything else will come together, even if it feels like it's falling apart.
Were there moments in your business that you think maybe this is the end of this business?
1,000 times. So many times. I mean, there was a period of time when
Yeah.
I think it was 2015. I had just made payroll. I had $40 in my business account and zero in my personal account. And I took a picture of it. I took a screenshot because I was like, there's no way I have to just close this business. I've been in business for 2 years at that point. I was like, I hadn't paid myself for a year, and there's no way. And within a week, we had $40,000 in our account. It was a
That's incredible.
client that we had seen a few weeks prior, and a week after I took the photo of having $40 in my account, we had $40,000 in the account. And so you have to know it's all in your mind. If you tell
Yeah.
yourself you're not going to make it, you're not going to make it. But if you really believe that things can change and that you're meant to do this, it will all happen, even in the moments where you feel like giving up.
It's funny because a lot of those moments I also had for myself. But on those moments, you don't feel bad. It's not, oh, I'm gonna lose this. You don't feel bad. You feel like you're a gambler almost.
Yeah, you do.
It's such an excitement because in your mind, in the back of your mind, you think, maybe this is the end, or maybe this is a start of something amazing of a story.
There are so many times that cash flow has really
Yeah,
gotten me. I might have, a good example is I didn't collect a payment up front, and we did all the work, and then they never paid. And it was, for this client that I'm speaking about, there was one that was a $250,000 job. And then they wanted to cancel the contract and didn't want to pay anything. And we're like, oh, shoot. So you just have to figure it out. You have to find another way. And it's not asking other people to help you financially.
yeah,
You just got to be really creative and resourceful, and
yeah,
almost like imagine yourself if you were on an island and you didn't have anything and you had to figure it out. You're going to find a way.
yeah.
And that's how it feels when you're a business owner. And so you definitely have to be relentless and resilient.
I feel that sometimes I don't know if this is true, but sometimes I crave the fact that I might lose tomorrow.
Really?
I don't know. I don't know why, because it just shows that, hey, if I might lose, then there's actual risk that I'm taking. There's an actual risk that I'm taking to the point that I might lose, and I might lose everything. But yeah, it's exciting, and it's gambling.
It does feel that way. And once you lose everything, you have nothing
Yeah,
left to lose.
yeah,
And that's been my scenario. Is when my husband passed away, we lost it. I mean, because of COVID, we lost 50% of our business
yeah,
because all businesses shut down. I had to get rid of my office,
yeah,
in this beautiful office that I had poured, my heart and soul into. I had
yeah,
to sell my house. I had lost everything. I was living in a hotel with my kids,
yeah,
running a business. And I have to tell you, when you get to that point,
yeah,
there's nothing going to hold you back because you were at the lowest. All you can see is is rising up. That's all you can
yeah.
see because you're already at the bottom.
Most of the businesses who were forced out of their offices and started, just doing remote work or virtual offices, there's the fear that there's the bad side that I lost my office, I had this and now I don't. But the bright side is most of the companies that are now fully virtual actually have a higher valuation if you try to sell them. So you actually became a better business by being worse.
And I became a better person by going through all of those experiences.
If you have a choice, would you enter another industry instead of marketing?
Absolutely. So I have so many dreams and goals, and one of
Yeah,
them is to have an experiential. like wellness studio where
Yeah.
there's like areas for music and art and yoga and acupuncture and massages
Yeah.
and just like a community where you can come, and it's almost like a day spa, but a day spa
Yeah.
for healing. And I think that would be something that would be my next adventure. So yeah, I could definitely see myself in a different industry.
Yeah.
I just have so many ideas. I need to keep myself focused and not start chasing squirrels.
That is a very interesting business that you can start, especially because now you have the ability to do so. You have the capital, but when you were just starting, maybe a few years ago, you didn't have that.
Yeah, even 2 years ago, and I've been in business
Yeah.
now for 11. Even 2 years ago, I didn't have that
Yeah.
capability, but it's a slow climb, but every day you're taking little steps forward, and that's all that matters because eventually I'll be there.
Yeah.
And so that's what keeps you going is when you have bigger dreams than what you're doing just right now.
Most people think that the business owners are just raking in cash and smoking cigars at their lounges because they have so much money. But most of the time, 90% of the time, they're at the scenario of the Serena Mastin who have $40 on their business account and zero on their personal. That's most of the entrepreneurs. That's most of them will stay, and most will, maybe some of them will move past that, but that's where most of them will stay and is currently. What message would you give to someone who wants to start a business?
I would say don't give up hope. If
Yeah.
this is something that you're passionate about and you want this,
Yeah.
then you need to be resilient. You
Yeah.
need to be relentless and you need to be resourceful. Those
Yeah.
three things. If you want to start a business, you have to know that it doesn't get easy.
Yeah.
You just get smarter.
No, I think instead of those boot camps where they just say, "Hi, you're gonna be a better person when you start a business. You're a unique snowflake. You're gonna crush it in business." I think they should have a boot camp where they just say relentless. You're gonna have face this tribulation. You're gonna face this adversity. You're gonna lose a lot. You're not gonna win in your first few years or your first few months. You're probably gonna need to do a lot of 100-hour work weeks with no financial return on your bank accounts. I
Yeah.
think they should do one of those.
Yeah. That's why I
Yeah,
said it's not easy, but if you
yeah,
are passionate about it, it will be worth it. But it's not easy and it's not
yeah,
for the faint at heart. You have to be willing to know that you're you could lose everything and you
yeah.
have to be okay with that because it's your choice. All of it's your choice. The good
And
and
I think a boot camp like that would save a lot of people who just wants to start a business because they think it's exciting.
I always say, even when somebody starts a business that I'm a little bit, worried about,
Yeah,
I say good for them. This will be a great learning experience.
it's gonna suck.
If you need a
Gonna-
shoulder to cry on, just give me a call.
Well, since we're nearing the end of the podcast, what advice would you give to anyone just about life generally?
I would say a quote that I love is more powerful
Yeah,
than the will to win is the courage to begin.
yeah.
And so don't let your fears stop you. Just push past them and move forward and take that first step.
How important is that first step in your opinion?
I think it's crucial because if you don't take that first step forward,
Yeah,
you're either going to go backwards or you're going to separate yourself from the people who can help and care about you
yeah.
in this sense of community.
It's amazing. And where can people find you, your books, or maybe just learn generally about your story?
So you can go to serenamastin.com. That's my personal website. All of my books are there. Or if you want more information on marketing or any support there, you can go to pulsemarketingteam.com. That's it.
Thank you for joining us on the New World Podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm honored to be here.
That's all for today's episode of the New World Podcast. We have explored some fascinating topics with our amazing guests, shedding light on the upcoming New World. If you enjoyed today's episode and today's discussion and want to stay updated on the future episodes, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, to the podcast. And if you found value on what we have discussed, please consider leaving us a review on your favorite podcast platform. Remember, if you have any questions or topics you'd like us to cover, or if you are interested in being a guest in the future, please feel free to reach out to me via LinkedIn or email me at john.paul@aicinix.com and add New World Podcast, all capital, in the subject line so I can see it. I always love hearing from our listeners. And don't forget to check out our amazing guests. You can find more information about them by the contact details we provided earlier. Again, thank you for tuning in on the New World Podcast. I know your time is very important and I try to always make the next episode better than the last. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, keep innovating. This is John Paul Flores signing off from the New World Podcast.